Hey everybody, Happy New Year. Laguna here. And today I'm talking about this book that I just finished reading. K.K.Downing's Heavy Duty, Days and Nights in Judas Priest biography. So I've been a Priest fan since I was a teenager, probably around 13. And a lot of the first riffs I learned how to play were Priest riffs. And one Christmas, probably my 13th Christmas, I got a good little collection of Priest albums gifted to me from my grandparents. I asked them for some Priest albums and they sent them, which is pretty great. I got Sin After Sin, Stained Class, Hellbent for Leather, and I think British Steel. No, I got Stained Class, Hellbent for Leather, and British Steel. Sin After Sin I got for myself later. So I got those three albums, and I would plug them in to my little CD player, just a Walkman CD player, and I would run that into my Fender amplifier to get louder sound so I could actually listen to them at a good level because I didn't have a good stereo or CD player of my own. So I would put on one of those CDs and I would jam out and I would figure out a lot of these riffs. And a lot of them I just kind of faked my way through, some of the more difficult riffs. And I don't really still to this day know how to play them properly, but I mess around with them for fun. But anyway, that's just a little background on me and Judas Priest, so that they're kind of been an important band for me for my most of my musical career. So if you follow Judas Priest in any way, you know that K.K. Downing quit the band in 2011. And that was kind of a bummer for me, but it wasn't a big deal because I was always more of a Glenn Tipton guy, which is the other guitar player in the band if you're not familiar. I was more of a Glenn Tipton guy than I was a KK guy. And that's only because I just appreciated his playing style. It was cool. I just liked his style. And KK I always appreciated, but he was never my favorite. So when he quit the band, I was bummed, but not really devastated, I'm sure, like a lot of the old hardcore fans were. I was surprised, that's for sure, because he's an original founding member of the band. And the group formed in 1969, so he was with Priest for over 40 years before he quit, so him quitting was kind of a big deal. And so, when I heard about this book coming out, I was immediately interested, but I didn't order it right away, and when Christmas time rolled around, I thought, hey, I'll gift myself, and I'll get myself K.K. Downing, Heavy Duty, Days and Nights in Judas Priest. So anyway, I just finished the book. And it was a fantastic read, and that's coming from a Judas Priest fan. So if you're not a Priest fan, it's not gonna be the same for you. It's probably not gonna hook you the way it hooked me and be as interesting to you as it was to me. Because it just highlights, KK's early life, which was fascinating. You learn about his upbringing, his childhood, and how rough that was, and how it kind of pushed him into the life he's lived, and how it's affected him personally. This is a really good look into his personal life and his professional life. So you learn about him as a person, which I thought was really cool, as well as his professional life. So anyway, starts when he's a kid, kind of quickly moves into his musical era, and just a lot of interesting highlights. There are things in here that I wish I had marked that KK says that reminded me of me. Just the same mentality of, oh, I wasn't making a lot of money playing music, but at least I wasn't working some fucking shitty job. And that's the way I feel. So there was a lot of moments where I was reading this book and I was like, yeah, totally. No, I get that, man. I'm with you. So there was a lot of moments of nodding and smiling in agreement. And so you learn about all the recording processes on the different albums, which I thought was really cool, just being a huge fan. You learn about, when they went to the studio, their writing process, how things came about, how Glenn ended up joining the band after they got their first record deal. He joined the band. It's a great, thorough book from his perspective. Obviously, it's got a lot of his, it's a biography, and he wrote it with the help of Mark Ellington, but it's really just KK's perspective on things. So everybody's got their own opinion, but I just found it very interesting to learn why he quit the band. And that's a really interesting point in this whole book. There's just a lot of conflict within the band, namely between him and Glenn Tipton, the other guitar player, which I was surprised because you see them on stage and you think, oh, that's K.K. Downing and Glenn Tipton. They're like the guitar duo. So you figured they were like best buds like that, just jamming all the time. But I guess that wasn't the case always. And K.K. tries to be a gentleman in the book, and he tries not to slander anybody. He's honest, and he says, I felt this way, he was like this, there were these problems. But he always kind of tries to end it on a complimentary note about how it was always great to play with them, and he wouldn't trade those experiences. So I felt like he was trying to be honest, and at the same time not really cut anybody down. So that was refreshing, that was nice. But, as I said before, I was always kind of more of a Glenn Tipton guy. And I remember when I went to see Priest, when they were doing the 30th anniversary British Steel Tour, me and my friend at the time, we got up to the front. We weren't supposed to be in the front. We had tickets that were like midway back. We tried to go over to Glenn's side first, and the security guard checked our tickets, and he's like, yeah, you guys aren't supposed to be up here. You're way back there. And I was kind of going to leave it at that. But my friend, he was more pushy than I was. And I'm thankful that he was, because we went around to the other side, to the other security guard, and he was just there leaning against a post with his shades on. I mean, the guy could have belted himself put to the post and took a nap for all we know. He would just stand there like a statue. So we walked right past him, and we had to be front row for that show. And so we were right in front of KK. Which at the time, I was thrilled, of course, to be in the front row, but I was really wishing I was on Glenn's side, just because Glenn was always my favorite guitar player. And it was a cool show, and I remember KK threw out a pick, and my friend who was with me, he got down on the floor, and somebody almost stepped on him, and he snatched the pick out, and he handed it to me right away, like, because I'm such a big Priest fan, so that was very cool of him to do. He could have just kept it for himself, and I wouldn't have blamed him. So I still have the KK pick. I don't have it with me right now. It's in storage, but the back of it's all scraped up because somebody stepped on it and it got slid across the pavement or cement floor or whatever, so you can't read it's got KK's signature on one side, and then the other side it says Judas Priest with their cool little pitchfork emblem. So the pitchfork side is still intact, but the other side's just, just kind of shredded. So anyway, getting to see Priest up front like that was really cool. And now, after reading this book, I mean, I have to say it's kind of changed my opinion on things. I've been kind of watching, when I watch Priest videos of live footage, I do see them in a different way. This definitely has altered my perspective of the band. And in a way, it's kind of made me more, on a personal level, kind of feel for KK and be kind of more of a KK guy. And I've been looking at them playing more closely now. And I noticed that I still prefer Glenn's style of playing, just to my ear. That's, I'm way into that. KK's a great player, totally different style, and I appreciate what he does and what he brings to the table, but I've always been more of a Glenn guy, and that's still the same, but personality-wise, and just, as people, I kind of look at them differently now. I'm like, well, I wonder if, he really was like this, like KK says in the book. But as I've watched them more closely, I've noticed some other interesting things just about the way they play certain riffs. And when I go to play Priest riffs, I tend to play them just physically, because if you're a player, you can play riffs different ways and achieve the same notes. And so, as I'm watching them play like the Breaking the Law riff, I notice I play it like KK plays it, and Glenn plays it a little differently. And so I've just noticed with different riffs and the way they play, I play more like KK, but I've always been more of a Glenn guy as far as my auditory preference. Just like, oh yeah, I like his solos and stuff. So that was an interesting, that kind of woke that in me to kind of pay attention a little bit more and figure these things out. Sorry, my battery died. So yeah, I had a lot of moments where I was just kind of nodding and I would show my girlfriend and I would be like, check this out, this is the way I like to think about things. And so it it was super inspirational in a lot of ways for me to want to break out the guitar and play or start recording. He said things like, he played in cover bands to make money, and that he felt like playing originals and honing your skills on original music. And that just spoke to me in volumes, because that's kind of the philosophy that I was always taught. My dad was kind of always he was always an original guy, and that's kind of the agenda he pushed for me. And I had and have a lot of respect for my dad, and always kind of trusted him and took his advice and saw his wisdom. And so I was always very much trying to be an original player and play original music. And I still do a cover. I only have one cover in my set list right now, but I'm thinking of covering a Priest song, because I've always loved Priest, and this is kind of just taking me right back there. But anyway, KK, yeah, similar theory, similar philosophy of playing originals and honing your skills with original music, because, covers are hard to play. You really, and especially if you have a crowd who wants to hear covers and knows the songs. They know every single note. They know every little aspect of those songs. So if you don't play it just the way it's recorded, they're going to know. So I think that playing covers is, I'm not knocking anybody for playing covers, because I know how difficult that is. Trust me, I've tried, and I'm not that capable of it. All my covers are very much changed and fit to my style. So, but I've always appreciated the original players more. Again, not to knock the cover people, because I get that, and I know how difficult that is. But I've always appreciated the original people more, and I've always tried to be an original person myself with my music. And everybody's got inspirations. They're going to kind of sound like other people, and everybody who listens to you is going to be like, oh, that kind of reminds me of this, because of what they listen to. But at the end of the day, trying to be original and writing your own stuff, that's always been the way I've tried to go. And this just kind of, again, I was kind of like reading this, and I was like, yeah, totally, man, I'm with you. So there was a lot of cool moments where I genuinely felt like I was connecting with KK on a personal level, where I just really agreed with him and felt very similar about a lot of his opinions. And I can't really draw any other comparisons between me and KK, because he had a rough childhood, which I did not, and he got out on his own very young, which I did not. So I would have to say that the only comparisons I could draw between me and him is just a philosophy of playing and wanting to be original and playing originals and focusing on that. And there's just other moments where he was talking about how when they'd go to record in the studio, they'd be very familiar with the tracks. They would know the songs, and they knew that they knew the songs. But as soon as that recording button was hit, he'd mess up, because he was so under pressure to get the song exactly right, and he'd played it live 1,000 times, but as soon as they hit record, it became a mess, and he'd mess up, and it was really humanizing and made me feel a lot better about myself to hear that from a professional like KK, because I do the exact same thing. Playing it live is one thing, but once you sit there and start to record, every single minute movement you make with your fingers, you're sitting there judging and watching, and it's just, okay, played exactly how it goes. Okay, here we go. We're recording the song. And so hearing him say that he had that same problem made me feel really good, because that was a huge struggle when I was recording my CD. So that, again, another good connection with KK. And fun moments too, just funny stories, and just talking about other musicians that he met along the way and friends that he made. That was cool just to hear him talk about, like the fellows from AC/DC. And he talked about Ronnie James Dio, and the last time he actually got to hang out with Dio before he died. So that was cool. And interesting stories about Priest's beef with Iron Maiden. I knew that there was a beef, but I always kind of thought it was like almost a fan-made beef. Kind of, just how that thing kind of happens, where fans of this band create beef with this band because they're both kind of similar in the same vein, and this band's better. But I guess the beef actually stemmed from when they took Iron Maiden on tour, and Iron Maiden talked shit about Priest in kind of a press release before the tour went off, saying that they were gonna blow the bollocks off Priest. So Priest and Maiden had a rocky start from the beginning, and I've always kind of been on the Priest side of that. But I can appreciate Iron Maiden, and I'm a fan of a lot of their songs, but I'm always going to be a Priest guy when it comes to Iron Maiden, but I wouldn't be like, fuck Iron Maiden. I respect those guys too, but yeah, I just thought that was kind of funny. I thought that was all kind of fan-made BS, but I guess there were some real issues with them when they toured with them. I was most interested to read about Nostradamus, because that's their concept album. That's kind of their biggest risk album. And I've always been interested in the notion of recording a concept album. You know, I think that'd be a fun thing to explore. And it is a risk, because especially for an established band like Priest, because you're doing something that's way against the grain. You're known for being this heavy metal band who, you know, churns out these rockin' hits, and they've deviated from that somewhat with like the Turbo era, which is kind of the more poppy synth sound, which I'm still a fan of. I think it's really good, but some fans didn't like it. And anyway, so I knew that they knew that Nostradamus was going to be a risk, and I didn't like Nostradamus when I first listened to it. I was pretty disappointed, and I think a lot of fans were. But I found the songs on it that I liked. And over time, I've grown to appreciate it for its artistry and its composition, and actually how well it's all put together. I think my mistake was looking at it as a heavy metal album. And that's why I didn't like it, because I went into it thinking this is going to be a heavy metal album. And I guess that's what you expect from Priest, but once you listen to it as just an album and as a story, it's a lot better, and you can really enjoy it. And being a writer myself and recording music myself, I try to appreciate things for their quality, not necessarily their genre. I like other music other than heavy metal. I'm not like a super heavy metal guy anymore. I used to be, but I like every genre. So once I kind of got out of that whole heavy metal mindset, once I went and listened to it again, I could really appreciate it more, because it's just good music. It's just not exactly heavy metal. There are heavy metal moments on the album, no doubt, but as a whole, I wouldn't call it heavy metal. It's a concept album. But anyway, so there's a lot of interesting tidbits about every recording, you know, the recording processes, the tours, and obviously KK addresses the real reasons why he quit the band. So if you're interested in that, I would suggest reading it. I won't give him away. That's kind of in the last chapter. That's the last part of the book. He touches on it from here and there in the beginning and, you know, throughout the rest of the book, but the end is really when he lays it out. And he actually talks about in the 90s, he almost quit Priest, right about the time Rob Halford quit the band. So that was a huge shock to me. That was a huge surprise. So if you're a KK fan, if you're a Judas Priest fan, if you're a biography fan, if you're a metal fan, I would recommend this book. Like I said, it was a huge page turner for me. Crazy easy read. Really what stopped me from reading it faster was how inspirational it was. I'm reading this book and I'm going, oh man, I gotta get in there and play my guitar. I gotta record some riffs. I gotta do this or that. Because it just excited me so much to hear the story about these guys back when they were young, getting it done. And going to see bands they liked. You know, KK talks a lot about Hendrix, and Hendrix was a huge influence on him, and how they would always sneak into the shows, and that made me feel that much better about sneaking up to the front to watch KK. Honestly, I didn't feel bad about it at the time, and only a little bit now did I even start feeling bad about that. But hearing about KK sneaking into a bunch of Jimi Hendrix shows and stuff, I was just like, yeah, that's what you do when you like a musician. You do what you can to get the best experience possible. You go for it, and I'm thankful that I had that opportunity and that I did that. So, in closing, read the book. If you're a Judas Priest fan, if you're a metal fan, anything like that. It's well written. It's easy to read. It's very interesting. You learn about KK as a person a lot. You learn about the band. You learn about why he left the band, the interpersonal struggles. But I warn you, it might change your whole perspective on the band, namely Glenn Tipton, because KK's biggest issues seem to be with Glenn Tipton. And yeah, just be warned, it may change your perspective on the band. But otherwise, I would recommend reading it. And yeah, anyway, this is a longer video than usual, so if you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Make sure to give me a like if you liked it. Give me a share. I appreciate that. And leave a comment. Let me know what you were thinking. Read the book, K.K. Downing, Heavy Duty Days and Nights in Judas Priest. And Happy New Year to you guys. Thanks.